So this video is a continuation of the video that I did yesterday, which is basically examining Jenn as a mother. Essentially looking at her own words, what she's telling us about herself as a mother. Yesterday's video ended up being 2 hours long. I will add the link below if you haven't seen it, but I only got as far as finishing the interview that was on the 29th of February. So in this video I'm looking at the interviews from the 1st of March and also the interview on the 18th of April. So these are particularly interesting because what we have with these later ones is that I think Jenn realises she's in the spotlight and she is trying to create the impression of being a good mother. And to me, what she's saying definitely falls short. So let's jump in and hear what else Jenn has to say about herself as a mother.
Just to let you know, we touched about it briefly last night that we are taking over the investigation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you say we, you mean homicide?
The Kissimmee Police Department.
Oh, okay.
So, but to answer your question, yes, we are now working this as a homicide.
Yeah.
Okay, because we have strong beliefs that Maddie is deceased.
Honestly, listening to her matter-of-fact tone there makes my blood boil. It's like she's asking them, so are we going to go to this shop now to buy this thing? You know, they're talking about her daughter. They're just repeating what they had said in the interview the day before, that they were dealing with it as a homicide investigation. And yet, she's almost chirpy about it. This is not the response that I would expect from a caring parent. Right now, she should be feeling like her entire world is shattered. And she shouldn't even be capable of words, just about. I just cannot fathom what must have been going on in this woman's head. Because it doesn't seem to me that there was a lot of thought going on with regards to her daughter.
So I don't want you to be caught off guard when that's being talked about later, okay?
Am I gonna be there at the press conference? Am I gonna hear it?
I don't know if it's going to be something that the family's invited to. Those decisions are way above my pay grade. It's just...
That is such an odd response. Am I going to be there at the press conference? Am I going to hear it? In other words, considering she's just been told that exact same thing, what she's saying there is that, am I going to have to perform in public? Because, let's be real, when has she ever shown any genuine emotion? She doesn't want to be seen in public. She doesn't want to go to a press conference that is about her missing child. Wouldn't you, as a parent, want to be seen at that press conference to show that you are genuinely concerned over the fact that your child is missing? Sure, you can make a request that law enforcement ask media not to approach you directly, but what an unusual response. This is not about Maddie for her. This is about Jenn. Jenn wants to protect Jenn, and in Jenn's mind, the best way of protecting Jenn is to not go to that press conference.
So let me ask you this. Where all have you looked for Maddie?
I haven't looked anywhere. I've stayed while we were at home. While we were allowed to be at home, I stayed at home just in case she would come back. For somebody to be home while she was back.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to use the Kylie Rodney case as an example here. Because Kylie Rodney went missing, I think it was something like 15 miles from her home at a campground while she was at a party. So it was some distance from her home that she went missing. While the search was in operation, her grandfather set up his RV or caravan or whatever it was at the command centre, which was essentially within minutes of the location where they were searching for Kylie. And that's where Kylie's family were while they were searching for her. They were within cooey of the last known location. They didn't wait around at home 20 minutes, half an hour's drive from where she went missing, thinking, well, maybe she might just turn up. Because, see, there's this newfangled technology called the mobile phone, or in America you call it a cell phone, which means that you can have the phone with you, and if your daughter's been found, someone can actually ring you and tell you your daughter has been found. Maddie went missing, supposedly, as far as Jenn knows, from near the school, which she tells us is a 15 to 20 minute drive, maybe longer, from her home. And she thinks that waiting around home for Maddie to turn up is the solution. BS. She just didn't want to get off her ass and go searching because she knew there was no point. And she pretty much confirms this with the next part of this statement.
And for now, since I haven't been able to go back home, I've been at my sister's house just hiding out. I don't want to be seen in public. I don't want anyone. I already had my own security gate. Like when I drove in there, they recognized me by my name, and when I told them my name and just their response, I wasn't prepared for just everyone to recognize me and know what's happening.
So she was so very concerned about staying home in case her daughter came home. But then she needed to hide out, so she's been staying at her sister's house. Well, that is a complete contradiction of what she's saying there. She's saying that the last couple of days I've been hiding out at my sister's house. They only told her the day before that they believed it was a homicide, meaning that at least one of those days when she was staying at her sister's house, she'd totally forgotten about this part of the narrative of wanting to be at her own house in case Maddie came home. She's such a liar. And as for this needing to hide out from the public, why would you need to hide out from the public unless you have a guilty conscience? Once again, we have Jenn putting herself first. She doesn't want to go looking for her daughter because that doesn't suit her own needs. Her needs of hiding out from the public are way more important to her than her need to find her daughter. What does that tell you about her as a mother?
And in the last few days, I just feel like, I don't know, the media have been like bombarding us, and since like more news have come to light, it's just, I've been feeling overwhelmed with the attention, and I just need to like preserve my mental health. I just have to stay home and...
Sorry, the audio's not the best on those clips, but what she's essentially saying here is that she was overwhelmed by the attention that she was getting from the media over Maddie being missing, and that she needed to preserve her mental health. Now, so often when you follow cases of missing children, the message that's coming out from the parents is essentially that they're holding it all together for the sake of their child, for the sake of finding their child. So they're getting out there, they're doing media interviews, they're searching if they are allowed to search. But their number one priority is finding their child. And until that happens, they are determined to hold it all together for the sake of their child. Jenn's number one priority here is to look after Jenn. Where's the concern over finding your child? There's none. Her priority here has got nothing to do with Maddie. Her priority is about preserving her mental health. And, well, hopefully in the meantime, someone else might find her child. But she's not overly bothered by that fact. Sure, we get that pissy little fake voice that she puts on when she tries to sound emotional. But who's convinced by that? Especially when the message that she's putting out there is, I am far more important than my child who is currently missing. My 12-year-old child who is still essentially too young to fend for herself out there in the world. But she doesn't care about that. She cares about Jenn.
I tried to go out a little bit yesterday to keep my mind off of things. Just to buy I don't have a toothbrush. I don't have anything. But the moment we were out in public, I felt so exposed and I shouldn't be out. I shouldn't be doing any of this. I grabbed what I needed quickly and we left. But I don't want to be out in public right now.
Again, the priority here is Jenn. She felt exposed when she was out buying essentials, and she doesn't want to be out in public. I find it fascinating that she would say that she felt exposed, because as a parent of a missing child, yes, I could imagine that people had seen her on the news and they probably were looking at her maybe. But if you were just in the mindset of, these people recognise me because they know my child is missing, then you shouldn't be feeling exposed. Yeah, it may be a little bit uncomfortable, but you should be thinking, wow, all these people know that my child is missing. Surely someone might speak up and say that they know something. But she doesn't want these people to see her. She doesn't want people to be thinking about her missing child. She doesn't want to be exposed. That to me sounds more like the mindset of someone with guilty knowledge. Someone who knows that something bad has happened as a result of their actions. So they don't want to be seen in public because in their eyes they see themselves as a bad person. So they see that reflected in the eyes of the people that look at them. Were she just a concerned parent, then you would expect that what she would see in the eyes of the people looking at her is concern over her missing child. And you would feel almost a sense of being supported by your community. But no, that's not the situation here with Jenn.
Did you feel like people were watching you?
Not people were watching me, but I just didn't like the night before that, the security guard's reaction to me telling her my name and who I was, and that I was coming into my apartment. That overloaded me so much, seeing someone it's just weird. It's just very heavy to handle other people's emotions when you're dealing with your own. Like, you have to like comfort everyone. When all I want is to be comforted. It's really heavy when the entire family and everyone's breaking down around it. Just laying low to preserve my mental health.
Now, surely it should actually feel like you are being supported when people say things to you about your child being missing. I just find it really, really odd for her to say that she doesn't like to have to comfort everyone. Because I'm pretty certain that that's not what people are after when they are communicating with her. I would imagine that the sort of interactions would be people saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that your child is missing. You know, is there anything I can do to help? Or I'm praying for you. Or, you know, something along those lines. It's not going to be someone bursting into tears and going, I feel so sorry for myself because your child is missing. I need you to comfort me. No. And Jenn should know that. I know that when it comes to neurodiversity, things like ADHD, autism, bipolar, that sometimes people do struggle to read social cues from other people. But this shouldn't be too hard to read, because I would imagine that in fact the verbal cues are there. People expressing to her in whatever terms they use that they care about the fact that her child is missing. These people are not asking anything of her. These people are offering support. And yet in her mind, that's going to damage her mental health. And she has to offer them comfort. It's such an odd thing to say, and it seems like a really egocentric thing to say. Yes, it could be hard to have one person after the next approach you and say, I'm so sorry about what's going on and I hope things work out. But Jenn's reaction to all this just seems so out of place. It just seems wrong for the situation. Let me know your thoughts on this, because I'm not sure if I'm really verbalising this enough. But it just feels like the wrong reaction from a mother whose child is missing. A mother who should be beside herself with worry and who should feel that people are supporting her, that people are showing their love through their words or their actions. But no, she feels burdened by people, and she's worried that it's going to affect her mental health.
Preserve my mental health. I'm just worried. In the past, I've been hospitalized for my mental health issues, and I'm just afraid like that this is gonna make me spiral again. So I'm just trying to stay sane.
Trying to keep it together.
Yeah. I don't want to end up back in the hospital again. I don't want to be unstable again.
Well, you got some of your family here. So.
Again, her priority is Jenn, not Maddie. Her biggest concern over everything that's going on at that moment in time is that she needs to preserve her mental health because she doesn't want to be hospitalised again. She doesn't want to be in a position where her mental health is just down the gurgler. Well, I bet it's down the gurgler now, Jenn. And I hope that a lot of that comes from guilt. But honestly, what kind of mother is going to prioritise their own needs when their child is missing? You would be worrying about your child. Those things that she's talking about, I would expect for most parents, that's not even going to come into their mind, because 99% of their brain power is going to be focused on the fact that their child is missing. And yet it seems like 99% of Jenn's brain power is focused on how having her daughter missing is affecting Jenn. This is just so definitely not what you would expect from a concerned parent.
Has he ever done it with Maddie?
Lashed out in front of us like that.
Or to her?
To her? No, I don't think so, no.
Has he ever got irritated or angry with her?
I would say yes, but like typical parenting stuff, like if she didn't clean her room when she was supposed to, like, you know, coming down on her for something like that. Was it like anger out of the blue or anger, like random anger? No. It was always like Maddie wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing kind of thing, so we come down on her.
And when you say come down on her, obviously, do you mean discipline?
Yell at
Yell,
her.
okay.
Yeah, we would never hit her. We were never physical with her.
Okay.
We would just be like, you're supposed to be doing this, you're not doing this, what's going on? Are you spacing out? Are you being lazy? Get on it.
So first of all, I would love to see like a camera footage of what she was doing just then when you could hear that slapping sound, because it sounded like she was like slapping at something for punctuation, and in my head that brings up images of her yelling at Maddie and banging on a table at the same time, and that would be so upsetting for any child. That's just going a step too far. Now, let's go back to what she's actually saying here. And she's basically saying that she allowed Stefan to do a parenting role. Now, can we just acknowledge the fact that they were on and off again when they lived down at outside of Northport? Was it Port Charlotte, I think it was called? Yeah, they lived together there for a while. But then she tells the interviewers that there were times when she was living back at her mother's house, and we know he wouldn't have been living with her then. they've had this on again, off again relationship. He is not a de facto. He's not a spouse. I just don't feel comfortable with the notion of him being allowed to take on a parenting role with this child. Clearly, Jenn was too lazy to be bothered with doing any parenting herself and was quite happy to just let anyone do it. But to me, when someone is not a stable figure in a child's life, then they should not be taking on a parenting role. And certainly by the time this girl is 12 and he's not even living in the house anymore, but Jenn makes it sound like she's just so comfortable with him yelling at her child. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but it just, to me, it rubs me the wrong way hearing her talking about allowing this guy to yell at her child, to take a parenting role in terms of discipline. Because I just don't think, unless you are married, and even then depending on the age of the child, the biological parent should be doing the bulk of the parenting here. It just, to me, once again, sounds like Jenn just couldn't be bothered parenting her child and was happy to just allow anybody else who would happen to be in the vicinity to do so. This is pretty poor, in my opinion.
I don't like her taking her meds without somebody visually seeing, watching her, because I don't want her to accidentally grab the wrong pill. She's comfortable enough to grab the pill by, but I'm like, no, I need to watch you take them.
Has there ever been an issue with that in the past, where she took too many or took the wrong thing? Or
No.
just like a thought in your mind?
No, just a thought in my mind, just me being hypervigilant. I want to physically watch her take her meds and watch her grab two, take them. I don't ever want there to be an accident of she took too many, or she took, my biggest fear is that she would take Adderall by accident, her daytime meds.
Got it.
How ironic is it to hear this woman calling herself hypervigilant? Sure, hypervigilant over her kids' meds, except of course on those occasions when she allowed Stefan to double dose her child. And why be so hypervigilant over your child's medications, but at the same time just allow your child to go upstairs and sleep with a predator? Now, it bugs me when she talks about her biggest concern is Maddie taking a double dose of her Adderall, because that would be bad. Now, we know that the issue in the past has not been about Maddie taking a double dose of her Adderall, but of her being double dosed with her sleeping medication and Jenn having had to call poisons to just find out if it was going to be okay. So in actual fact, what she's doing here is she's deflecting. She doesn't want to say that there's been screw-ups in the past where Stefan gave Maddie her meds after I gave Maddie her meds and basically overdosed her to the point where she couldn't wake up. So to deflect, she talks about the other medication where, at worst, the side effect is going to be that Maddie can't sleep. What would be the result of that? Probably her being exhausted the next day and needing a day off school. Physical impacts? Nothing dangerous as far as I know. But Jenn claims that that's her biggest fear. I think we also need to acknowledge here that she's claiming to be hypervigilant about Maddie's meds, and yet there is a history of Stefan mismedicating Maddie, and yet Jenn was quite happy while she was off at work to allow Stefan to be the supposedly responsible adult who was his job supposedly to make sure Maddie took her nighttime meds. I'm sorry, but if it was my child and a moron like that had double dosed my child, you can bet that I would either be having the child stay with my parents overnight so they could medicate her adequately, or I'd be putting the meds away until I got home and supervising medicating the child myself. Given that if she's medicated too late, Maddie had trouble waking up, then it seems like the responsible thing for a parent to do would have been to have the child stay overnight with her grandmother, or to have her aunt, who was clearly more responsible than Stearns, supervise Maddie taking her meds. As for hypervigilant, we never once heard Jenn mention in all her interviews the fact that, based on her timeline, Maddie never took her morning meds on the day she went missing. Now we know that obviously she didn't because she was already deceased, but if we're following Jenn's timeline of Stefan driving Maddie to school, never once do you hear her say but she forgot her meds before going to school. Never once do you hear her talk about arranging for Maddie to go to school with Stefan the next day and making sure that arrangements were in place for her meds. Of course she got her clothes laid out, but meds, not a concern. And yet Jenn claims she's hypervigilant about Maddie's medications.
Would you be okay with our digital people looking at your phone to verify there's no stuff coming into socials, text, things like that?
That's fine.
Do you have the phone?
Yeah.
What they'll do is they'll plug it in, they'll do a forensic download of it so they have the data. That way they can go through it and say, you know, we did receive things, we didn't receive things, here's the communications in and out, things like that, so we can verify that for you.
That's fine.
Do you have a password on it?
030288.
030288. Okay.
Is that a birthday?
My birthday.
It's your birthday?
Yeah.
My birthday's tomorrow. Right?
Today's the first. I didn't even know. What is like the first? This is the worst birthday ever.
So to me, the only consolation from watching that little performance there is the knowledge that every year for the rest of her life, her birthday is going to be miserable, because she's going to be reminded that her birthday came the day after her daughter's remains were found. There's a little bit of justice in that. But let's talk about it. They've been talking about Maddie being deceased. They've been talking about the things that Stearns has been doing to Maddie. And when do you get emotion from Jenn? Over the fact that it's going to be her worst birthday ever. And I can't help wondering if that's more because she wanted Stearns there for her birthday, and she probably had some wonderful plan for the three of them, a little Jenn party, and now she was missing out on her birthday party. Because she seems to prioritise Stearns. So, really, all I can take away from this is that she's able to shed tears for herself because her birthday's been ruined, because her daughter is missing, presumed deceased, and her ex-boyfriend is in jail. Well, suck it up, princess, because you're going to have that same birthday every year now for the rest of your life.
Does she sleep there? No. She'll hang out there. She'll use her computer and hang out there. That's her hangout spot. But she primarily sleeps with me every night in my bed. That's because I know the roommates wake up super early in the morning. They're going to be in the kitchen. They're going to wake her up if she's sleeping out in the living room. So I don't.
So she's acknowledging here that makeshift bedroom is actually not a suitable bedroom because it's not a quiet area where a child can sleep. There's disruptions. Just take someone out in the kitchen or in the living area and she's going to be woken up or she's going to be disturbed. So if you can recognise that this corner of your living room that you've turned into a bedroom for your child is actually unsuitable as a bedroom, why not do something about it? Now, I did a bit of research and I had a look at rental prices for properties in Kissimmee which had 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, which is what this townhouse had. And I took out the highest and lowest prices, obviously, and then averaged out what was left. So I basically I started with 14 and I averaged out 12. And I calculated that the average cost of a room in Kissimmee is about $616 a month. Jenn was paying $300 a month. Her flatmates were being overcharged, of course, but she was only paying $300 a month. That upstairs bedroom, Stephen was apparently paying $600 a month. So realistically, even if she's being given that downstairs room for $300 a month, she's still doing better than had she been renting from someone other than her father and had no option but to provide a bedroom for her daughter. At the end of the day, from what we have been told, she was getting child maintenance payments from Tyler. She was paying a fraction of the regular monthly cost of a room. And here she is admitting that the area that she allocated as a bedroom for her child was actually unsuited as a bedroom area, and that's why her child wouldn't sleep there.
Her phone was on her dresser. When I found it, I was like, oh my god, she's got her phone again. That's great. I brought it with me to the school because I was just gonna yell at her and then just hand it to her so she could have something to do on our way home.
Now that's actually quite a telling statement there, because we know that, according to Maddie's school counsellor, that Jenn used to yell at Maddie quite a bit. And Jenn has basically given this information without editing in her head what she was going to say. So she's essentially admitted that she would yell at Maddie for something as trivial as forgetting her phone. Why would you yell at your child for forgetting their mobile phone? Maybe if it was an expensive mobile phone and they left it somewhere in a food mall and it was gone for good, then maybe you could be justified with getting a little bit hot under the collar and yelling a little bit because they had just lost a phone that cost a bucket load of money. But let's consider the implications of Maddie leaving her phone at home. Her school has a policy where if you are seen with your phone out, it is taken from you and the parents have to collect it from the office. The students aren't even allowed to have like earbuds plugged into mobile phones at school. So essentially, within school hours, they're not allowed to have their phones. Given that Maddie is dropped off and picked up from school, what's the harm if she had actually been at school and forgot to take her phone? The only harm would be perhaps her wanting to communicate with friends during a lunch break or something. Schools have offices where kids can go and say, "Can you please call my parent if there's a problem?" So it wasn't actually something that was worth yelling about. And I think this tells us a lot about the relationship between Jenn and Maddie. And to me, it is a little bit concerning.
At some point in this, I emailed one of her teachers asking, actually emailed a few of her teachers and two of them responded. One of them said, no, she did not make it to class, and I checked her attendance for the rest of the day. She wasn't in school at all. Like, he sent me a screenshot of like her attendance and it said 0, 0, 0.
You still have that on the phone?
Yes.
Okay.
If you need to know what app, I'll tell you what app. It's a special school app.
Got it.
He said she was missing all day. And at this point, I start to panic and freak out because that can't be the case. She was dropped off.
So, based on the account given by Maddie's teacher, that reply to Jenn about Maddie not being at school occurred after Jenn's family had called 911 to report Maddie missing. And yet Jenn's telling us that that's when she started to panic. So she started panicking at around 4:45 when her daughter had been missing for 40 minutes already. I doubt that she actually ever panicked, because surely were you concerned about your child not coming out of the school, the first thing you would have been doing, and I've said this so many times, is parking up and going into the school. They have tags on the cars in the pickup line, meaning that they have staff who are there to man the pickup line, and if a car is waiting and a child does not come out, they must use a radio system to radio the office or something, and the child gets called up. So why not, while you're there in the pickup line, if you're thinking, well, I bet I'm gonna have to go soon, which we know is BS, why not flag down one of those staff members whose job it is to call up kids whose parents are waiting in the pickup line and say, my daughter hasn't come out yet, can you radio the office? But no, none of that. Jenn just goes off in her little happy little world, and even after her family have called 911, apparently she's still off in her happy little world. And then 3 minutes later she gets notification that Maddie wasn't at school at all, even though by that stage you'd think she would have figured it out. And then she starts to panic. This is not what I would expect from any kind of decent parent.
I think at this point the teacher had responded to me and told me she didn't make it to school at all. I start having like a freak out panic attack. And
Are you still just you at this point? Is it you and Stefan?
it's me and my sister. And I want to say one of them is Catherine. I start panicking, and I think at this point I call Stefan and I tell him, hey, because she didn't make it. She's absent today. There's no attendance of her at all today. I'm like, right now. And he said, okay, I'll be there.
Now Jenn comes out with these things like, I started having a freak out panic attack, or I ugly cried the whole way home. But the thing that is absent every time she says this is any description of physical experiences. If someone is having a panic attack, you would expect them to be describing something like, suddenly I felt so sick, my chest felt so tight, and I felt like I just couldn't breathe. But no, she's just, I had this panic attack. And she was having such a panic attack that she was able to hop on the phone and ring Stefan and say, Maddie never made it. The last person that saw Maddie, first of all, it took her 40 minutes to get around to calling him. And I said this in yesterday's video. That would be my first call. Where did you drop off Maddie? Why I can't find her? She hasn't come out of school. You need to come now. But no, she waited 40 minutes, and then apparently in the middle of a panic attack, she was quite calm enough to ring up Stefan and then tell him Maddie never made it. Now, I don't know how many of you have had panic attacks before, but in the past, when I've had panic attacks, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I have had panic attacks in the past, I have been incapable of speech. Because you hit a point where either you are just suddenly crying uncontrollably because of a panic attack, or you feel like you can't breathe and you can't get any words out. But we're not hearing any of that from Jenn. No, she was fine enough to make a phone call to Stefan. So I call BS on that. She's basically trying to give the impression of being the caring mother. For her, it's all about impressions. She's thinking, how should I have acted? This is how I should have acted, so I'm going to describe it. But she forgets to actually describe the physical experience of what it is she was saying happened.
I stayed up late. I think I called Fox 35. What else did I do? I think eventually eat and take my medication. He told me he was going to go out cruising that night to go look for her. And I said, I even questioned that. I asked him, are you sure it's a good idea? You should probably sit tight. Let's just wait to see if she comes home.
Okay, there's two things there that I need to address. I'll address the first part because the second part just does my head in completely, so I'll come back to that. The first part is her basically saying that eventually she needed to eat and take her meds. Once again, Jenn comes before anything else. Yeah, daughter's missing, but number one priority is let's look after Jenn. Jenn wants to eat and take her meds so she can get a good night's sleep. Which apparently she did because she was so utterly aware that Stefan took her car out overnight. I'm sorry, but if you are a parent who is concerned because your child is missing, your child has been missing for well over 12 hours, probably 14 hours by that stage. Most parents probably wouldn't even remember to eat. Most parents would only consider eating if someone actually put the food in their hand and said, you need to have something to eat. Not Jenn. Jenn's onto it. Jenn knows that she's got to look after herself first, have her food and take her meds. But let's talk about what she said to Stefan when he said he wanted to go out looking. She's claiming that she didn't think it was such a good idea because they should just sit tight and wait to see if she comes back. Now, my quirky little fur family that I have here, my bigger dog is slowing down a bit now as she starts to get older, and my cat is only one. So even though my cat is not meant to go outside, she takes advantage of the fact that Taka takes a little while to get through the back door, and she will zip between Taka and the frame and get outside. And I'll call her if she's already taken off. If she's been outside for a while, I might become a bit anxious about it. But because she's a cat, and I know she knows her way around, I will think there's not a lot of point in me going around the neighbourhood, because if I wait, she will probably come back in another hour or two. Were it 24 hours later, I might become a little bit anxious. But we're not talking about a cat. We're talking about a child. A child who didn't even go missing from the location where the townhouse is, supposedly. According to their story, Maddie went missing a good 15-20 minute drive from their house. But Jenn doesn't want Stefan to go out looking because she thinks they should just sit tight in case Maddie comes back. Do you need both of you to be at the house if Maddie comes back? No, you don't. A parent should be grateful that someone is going, look, I can't sleep, so I'm going to drive around. I would be, well, thank heavens for that. Of course, personally, I'd be the one that was out there driving around all night, thinking my child's out there somewhere in the dark, starting to get cold. Maybe they're somewhere where they don't even know where they are. But none of that from Jenn. No. She questions whether it's a good idea to go looking for her missing child. Yep, that's great coming from a parent.
When you guys let us know we couldn't come back, and I called his dad, or we called his dad, I started saying to him, like, I think they're focusing in on you. Like, we need to call your dad, and I think we need to get you a lawyer. I feel like they're focusing on the wrong person, and he kept saying the same thing. He kept repeating what I was repeating. That, they're focusing on the wrong person. They're wasting time there.
So there's been so much said about that already. The fact that her priority there was getting a lawyer for Stefan. No thought whatsoever about even what them locking down the apartment might mean. Now, wouldn't you start actually questioning the person who was last with your child if the investigation has suddenly gone in the direction where they are locking down the apartment? But no, to her, Stefan was more important than Maddie. So rather than turning around and saying, what have you done? What do you know? Why are they suddenly focusing on you? Instead, it's, oh, totally innocent. We've got to get him a lawyer. Doesn't sound like a parent who's overly concerned by the fact that her child is missing. She's more concerned by the fact that law enforcement are taking a really close look at her ex-boyfriend, who happens to be the last person seen with her child, or the last person with her child, because at that point in time she doesn't know that he was actually seen with Maddie. But you know where I'm going with this. Not the right priority for a parent.
When I went to Target, I decided, like, oh shit, I shouldn't be out in public. People could recognize me. It can either be good or bad, where people could tell me. I've already had people recognize me in my community, and dealing with people's heavy emotions, and them coming to me and crying and telling me they're so sorry and how they feel is so heavy, because like I just have to kind of stand there and take their emotions, and like, I don't know, it's so heavy. When I realized that these were the interactions I was having in public, I'm like, I need to stay at home, because I just can't carry anyone else's emotions right now. I have my own to deal with, like my own. I don't want my own mental health suffering right now, or for me to spiral and end up back being hospitalized.
I'm sorry, but to me, an innocent parent would be overwhelmed in a positive way by the outpouring of love from strangers over her child. And yet, she speaks like someone who feels guilty and feels like people are looking at her because they know she's guilty. You should be feeling relieved almost, and I don't know if that's quite the right word, but you should feel supported if people are coming up to you and expressing that they are concerned about your child also. It should allow you to feel that you're not alone. That is, unless you've got something to hide. And then, yeah, maybe then you do want to hide out in your sister's house and not allow people to see you, because they just might see that little bit of guilt on your face. Or they might question the lack of emotion from you when they are emotional over the fact that a beautiful little 12-year-old girl is missing.
What is, like, your kind of day-to-day with her?
I would have said a normal relationship. I asked, she would tell me. I didn't think she was hiding anything from me. I didn't think she was lying to me about anything, but obviously she had secrets.
I mean,
So it's shameful enough when victim blaming occurs, but when it is the victim's own parent, she's basically here victim shaming Maddie for having secrets. Well, this is something that was happening to Maddie for quite possibly full 7 years that Stefan was in her life. And can you blame a young child that's been groomed by a predator for not disclosing it? Chances are he manipulated her so well that she wasn't going to tell anyone. Is that her fault? No. So how dare you turn it around and victim blame her? This is so wrong.
He's like, yeah, did you hear this? This is super cute. And I was like, oh. I hadn't. She hadn't told me. And I wondered, I'm like, why didn't she tell me? Why did she tell him and not me? Like, I want to know who she's got a crush on. But maybe it's because I've told her she had a rule. She wasn't allowed to date for a few years.
okay.
Until, like, I think I had said 16 or something like that. But I didn't want her dating.
Okay, where to start with that? Well, first of all, the fact that she's really vague about, well, she thinks it was 16, to me says that this is another instance of Jenn wanting to give the appearance of being a responsible parent, in that she's got this imaginary rule that her daughter wasn't allowed to date till she was 16. Because if it was a real rule, she would have known precisely what age she had told Maddie, no, you can't date until this age. But she just plucked that out of the air during the interview. That's why it was like, I think 16. But can we just acknowledge this? Aside from the fact that she is clearly making up a story here because she thinks that's what a responsible parent should look like, she's saying that she would not allow Maddie to date till she was 16. And yet it was perfectly acceptable to send Maddie upstairs to sleep alone with a 37-year-old man. Wrong, Jenn. Totally wrong. No parent would ever consider that right. And I think the fact that she did allow that to happen shows us even more so that this no boyfriend rule is just a made up story.
I had a rule. She wasn't allowed to sleep in his bedroom at all. Like, no sleepovers, no nothing. For a very long time. For years.
Since we're pausing,
Yeah.
what brought that on? Was that like a request of his, like, can we sleep in the same bed? Request of hers, or you just saying?
Me being super paranoid, not to trust anyone. For the longest life, even though he treated her well, I still looked at him on, like side eye, like making sure, like, is that normal? Is this okay? That looks normal. Okay. I wanted to make sure that nothing was happening and that I was missing something, but I was.
Again, she's saying what she believes sounds right in her head. That she was super paranoid about something happening. Well, I call BS on that, because if you were super paranoid about something happening, you would be reading their body language every moment that you saw them together. And you would see those little things that screamed wrong. In the interview that Chris and Deb Stearns did with Hidden True Crime, Deb Stearns mentioned at one point in time where they were at her place that Maddie put her arm around Stefan and told him that she loved him. That is a major red flag. If you were a parent who was super paranoid and you saw your child doing that, why would you even consider sending them upstairs to share a room together? Regardless of the fact that no reasonable parent would ever send their pre-teen child upstairs to sleep alone with a man, regardless of whether that man was her biological father or just some 37-year-old loser like Stearns. It's just so wrong. These things that she says where she's trying to give the impression of being a responsible parent, she was super paranoid. BS. Because if she was super paranoid, she never would have let it happen, and she would have actually paid attention to what was going on in her own house.
It wasn't until June that he got his own bedroom and I sent him upstairs. That's where the requests for sleepover started.
Okay.
And I kept telling her no. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that. But eventually, at some point, like we really want to watch. I forgot what movie it was. They really wanted to watch something, and I was really tired. And I said, okay, fine. Go ahead, but this can't happen often. And yeah, I allowed her to go upstairs and sleep with him. But honestly, I think I can count on one hand how many times that's happened, and it hasn't been many times that I've allowed her to have a slumber party with him, to be alone in a bed with him. I'm usually around all the time.
If you listen here to exactly what she's saying, she's showing that she had a pretty good idea of what was going on. She initially terms it as in almost vague terms of calling them sleepovers. Now that sounds a little less direct than sleeping together. But while that is her sort of, I guess, the official line, that she allowed them to have sleepovers, but she said to them, oh, this can't happen too often. So then and there, she's basically saying, yeah, I'm allowing it, just not every night. Can't happen too often is not this is a one-off, this is never happening again. This is, I'm completely accepting of this situation, but for whatever reason, it can't happen too often. Well, there's a lot of leniency in that statement. But then she goes from referring to them as sleepovers to allowing her to go upstairs and sleep with him. So now you go from this notion of a little slumber party to someone sleeping with someone. When you think about it that way, it does sound a little bit more explicit and a little bit less innocent. But then by the end of what she's saying, she says to be alone in a bed with him. Right there, she's admitting to what it was she was allowing. This woman's not a complete dimwit. She knows the implications of allowing her daughter to be alone in a bed with a 37-year-old man. And the fact that she has said it so explicitly shows to me that she knew exactly what she was talking about here, which is really disturbing. Most parents with a teenage girl are going to be like, you're not even allowed alone in your bedroom with your boyfriend. You need to stay out here where I can see you. Were it Maddie and a teenage boy, would she allow them to be alone in a bed together? No. Because she would make that presumption that something was going to happen. And yet a grown-ass man who has his own Viagra tablets, even though he's not active with her, and she's happy for him to share a bed alone with her daughter. This is far from what you would expect from any kind of responsible parent. So there's still many clips to go through, and I do want to do this justice because I think this is one of the really important things in Maddie's case, to really scrutinise what's going on with Jenn Soto. And of course, it's New Year's Day here in Australia. I'm feeling a little bit weary because who doesn't have a late night on New Year's Eve? So I'm flagging a bit, heading up towards dinner time. I think this is probably a good spot for me to stop this particular video, and I will finish this all off in tomorrow's video. Hopefully you will join me for that one. So thanks for listening. If you are new, please subscribe to my channel. Also, please hit the like button, that gets more people seeing my videos, and please leave a comment below. I've had a lot of trouble recently with the comments being turned off by YouTube. Hopefully that won't happen, but just know that if it does happen, I will be making sure that I do turn them back on again periodically. So I will, whenever I notice that they're turned off, I'll be turning them back on again. So if you do have something you really want to say, you can always come back a bit later on and see if the comments are turned back on, which is a real pain. But hopefully the comments will remain on and you'll be able to make your comments below, because I really enjoy reading people's comments. I love hearing what you've got to say, and there's a lot of really insightful things that are coming out of this deep dive into Jenn as a mother. So I'm really looking forward to seeing people's comments on today's video. So thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Into